Treasury is all about compliance reports, making sure that the company has enough funds and is liquid today. And there's a lot more to that. I always think back into an example of a customer that we've worked with here in the hotel business. And the Treasury group is deeply involved in really key decisions of the organization, right? So as they're forecasting, they're also looking at, you could have potential floods in certain areas, like think in Florida, for instance, where there are natural disasters, and the company, the hotel business, needs to decide where do they invest, right? Where are people going on vacation?
This episode of the Treasury Truth or Dare podcast is courtesy of Bottomline. Bottomline's global cash management hub empowers Treasury teams to optimize liquidity without the cost of a Treasury management system or the hassle of spreadsheets. The platform empowers Treasury teams to improve visibility by delivering a consolidated view of cash in a single platform that syncs with all of your banks and bank accounts automatically. It gives every stakeholder the same holistic view. The platform also empowers Treasury teams to optimize working capital through a single view of cash, credit, facilities, loans, and other financial statements. The platform also allows Treasury teams to be much more efficient by automatically generating statements and bank account reports, reducing errors and time-consuming tasks so Treasury teams can spend more time on strategic activities. Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey. I'm your host for the Treasury Truth or Dare podcast. Today, I'm honored to have with me as my featured guest, Leo Gil. He is the Vice President of Product at Bottomline Technologies. Leo, it's a pleasure to have you here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Hi, Ernie. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
Thank you. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to experience the Treasury Truth or Dare podcast, what we do is we go through several rounds of your truth or dare. So I will ask Leo if he'd like to take a dare or share with us a Treasury truth. And then after a few rounds, I'll flip the script and I'll let Leo ask me a dare, and we'll see what Leo has to offer up for me today. So Leo, let's go ahead and get started. So for round one, are you going to go for a truth or are you going to go right for a dare?
Let's start with the truth.
All right. Please share with us, in which areas of Treasury are you the most passionate?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm most passionate about really simplifying Treasury operations. As you know, Treasury can be quite complex, but looking from the perspective of a solution provider's bottom line, really what we're looking for is to make user interfaces more intuitive, more accessible, and of course, more intelligent. Treasury has been really siloed and complex, and I think by simplifying tools and then simplify capabilities and giving more AI capabilities and tools to treasurers, you really can help, simplify all of their operations and democratize treasury in a way.
I love a few things. I love that I'm always on a platform about silos. So I think that's something that we really need to look at. So I've actually done some research sponsored by Bottomline where we've shown that silos exist across the cash management spectrum, AP, AR, and Treasury. And so that's it. We need to remove those. But also I like what you said about complexity. We need to make things easier. And for me, one thing that makes things more complex is if we can't see anything, right? So that
Right.
visibility enables us to, I think, make things easier on ourselves because we can actually see and make data-driven decisions, which is what AI allows us to do. All right, round two. We're going to go with another truth or are we going to go on the dare side?
Let's keep with truths.
All right. All right. So just to follow up on that, so you shared with us your passions. So can you give us a little bit of background around what you feel is the inspiration behind Bottomline's cash management hub and why this is the right time for this particular solution?
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. So, the inspiration really came from as we talk with treasurers and work closely with them, that need for simplifying operations and bringing all of the fragmented systems together is prevalent still, right? So there's still lots of manual processes, lots of spreadsheets, but all of that with a, simple and a well-designed user interface without, sacrificing any sophistication or processes that treasurers will need to do in their organizations. So the inspiration really comes from solving the 80% of the problems when it comes to treasury. So with 100% of visibility, right? So there are, very niche, nuanced capabilities in treasury, and that's not what we're focusing on for the most part. We're focusing on for solving cash visibility, cash forecasting, reconciliation, working capital optimization in a simple and usable way. That's really where the inspiration for our cash management solution came from. On top of it, of course, as treasurers get more and more involved in payments, where historically treasury has been just a separate component or a separate department, that just knew of payments flowing through the organization, but not necessarily been involved in payments in and out of the company. We see that changing a lot. So what we've also have done with our product is to extend the product into what we call our global payments hub. So our global payments hub helps completely automate the payments workflows with security, and compliance in mind, of course. But combining with the treasury capabilities we have in cash management, it makes quite of a unique product offering in the market, and that's what we're going for today.
Love that. And like to get kind of dovetail what I've seen as well is talked a little about the silos between kind of and even payments, AP and treasury. So there's a lot of times where there's no coordination between the timing and type of payments. So having strategy behind what type of payments are we making them, how are we making them, that offers a lot of value. But the efficiency part is a lot of place where people don't really think about that, and even on the approval side. So having a strategy behind your payments mix and your timing, and especially with all the global uncertainty, right? We are getting a lot of issues with suppliers as well. So it's a great time for your solution. Okay, let's go to our next round here. We're going to go for another truth or a dare.
Let's go for a dare.
All right, all right. I like this one. What's the least favorite part of your professional life?
So honestly, it's really just the administrative overhead
Right.
that I have to deal with from running a product organization, right? So
Yeah.
lots of approvals and compliance forms and just occasional bureaucracy that I have to deal with, that it feels like it slows down innovation. Of course, I understand the need for it, but that's, I would say, that's probably the least favorite part, especially for us. We're a global company. We have customers in the Middle East, for example, and you can imagine the different requirements that arise from that, from having to deal with different workflows for treasury, different payment workflows, and so on, which puts a lot of there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into solving these problems for customers in different parts of the world.
Okay. Well, given that you've been brave enough to take a dare, I'm going to go ahead and let you ask me a dare.
Okay. Could you tell us like a mistake that you've done in your career in treasury?
Oh, that's a podcast isn't long enough for all those things. So, so I would say this is a general mistake for myself in Treasury, in that I was so focused on getting things done, I wasn't focused on the impact and collaborating with the folks around me. So we had all these Treasury goals to do, and I would just kind of run over people without looking at the body count on the way. So my perception of myself, which I was this great treasury professional, and I was good at getting things done, but I wasn't a pleasure to work with, I'll put it that way. And I was missing opportunities to learn from others and make us all better. So I think not investing in the relationships with my colleague is a pretty big mistake that I was making early in my treasury career.
That's great.
Let's turn the spotlight back on our featured guest here. Okay, Leo, we going to go back for a truth, or are we going to go for another dare?
Let's go for truth.
All right. This is one of the favorite questions that I like to ask, because part of the reason I'm doing the podcast is I think our brand needs to be improved and promoted, especially to younger professionals and those that are still maybe in high school and college. What are some things, a few things you think we can do to increase the awareness of the treasury profession to young professionals and make our brand more impactful?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that the first one is to, really tell a better story, right? I think
Right.
about treasury as sometimes when someone explains what treasury is, it feels like it's a back office function where you are swamped with spreadsheets and reports and compliance. requirements in the organization. It's not the truth, right? Treasury touches everything from global markets to technology, risk, strategy, right? There's a lot more to treasury when in the day to day of a treasurer than reports compliance, right? So I think just telling a better story is one part. The second part, I think it's on technology, right? As you can imagine, a lot of young professionals or college grads, they are getting out of school. They are used to using different tools. They are more modern and systems that, on a day to day. And, a lot of what I think, Treasury and young professionals are looking for is a continuation of, better tools, intelligence, AI, that they already use to use every day. And sometimes because treasury can be in certain organizations can be so siloed, so manual, it's not something that a young professional is looking for, right? It's not just for young professionals, I would say even for retention of employees as well. So I think that the mix of being able to better explain what treasury is and what it
Hmm.
does, and use of technology. I think just
Right.
combining those would definitely
There.
increase more the awareness and the ability to acquire and retain more talent.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. But you just especially what you talked on the technology piece of it is part of our value proposition as a profession in companies that have that is a good way for them to get the right talent and keep the talent, right? The best talent that they have, because there's definitely a little bit of a shortage. So just a little follow-up truth here. So we have some young professionals, and I know my answer to this. Why is Treasury fun? How can we communicate? What is it about Treasury that you think that you enjoy or that you get that sense from people that you talk to who are treasury professionals? Why do they enjoy it?
Yeah, I think, it's really the ability for Treasury to impact multiple areas of the
Yep.
organization, right? Treasury is not just the function that it's looking at today or looking at the past, especially when we think about forecasting, right? Which is a function that it's quite difficult for many organizations, but really important, right? Treasury has the ability to look into the future and help drive decisions within the organization. So I think having that impact is what really drives me closer to treasury, and where I feel is so important, is just this strategic the ability for treasury to operate in a strategic level in an organization, help the organization grow, help the organization go through or survive through potential issues and with customers, with markets. I think that's really the key part of treasury that I do like the most.
Yeah, I concur. Treasury is absolutely dynamic. What I tell folks is when I was in Treasury, none of my days were the same, and nobody had better visibility and really communication across the entire organization than I did when I was in Treasury. So that to me was incredibly exciting, and you can't stand still. So it makes it exciting. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our next round here. Are we going to stay on the truth front, or are we going to go back for another dare?
Let's go back from out of there.
All right. Since you were kind enough to share least favorite part, this is another one question that I've asked before, but I know you a little bit. I'm interested in this one. What movie is your guilty pleasure?
Oh, Godfather Part 2. So that's yeah, that movie, anytime that movie is on, I'm always watching. My wife is not very happy about it because if I see it on, I'll stop everything to watch the movie. So that's my guilty pleasure, and I love that movie from the parts when the early 1900s to the late 1950. I can quote lots of lines in that movie, so it's really one of my favorite movies. Yeah.
Give us a line. You knew I was gonna ask.
I do like the later part when Rothstein is talking about the that's the life we've chosen, when
Yep.
he's in Cuba and he's, next to Michael Corleone. That sometimes reminds me of my day-to-day work. There's a lot of
Yep.
things that we have to deal with when it comes to bank integration and integration with different ERPs and different systems, which sometimes I tell you it's not for the faint of heart, but I always think back that line as,
Mhm.
that's the life we've chosen. So
Yeah.
we just have to go through it and enjoy it.
I enjoy it as well. So my wife knows if she hears me, I'm walking around going da 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 da. Da." She goes, "All right, I know what's going on." So I enjoy that as well. Okay, let's get back to it. Are we gonna go for another dare? We're gonna go back for a truth.
Let's go back for truth.
Yeah. So, do you sense there's any myths that still exist? Touch on a little bit about the role that Treasury has, and that you'd like to address.
I think, goes back to the prior question about the young professionals, right?
Yeah.
There's a myth that Treasury is all about compliance reports, making sure that the company has enough funds and is liquid today. And there's a lot more to that, right? An example of a customer that we've worked with in the hotel business, and the treasury group is deeply involved in really key decisions of the organization, right? So as they're forecasting, they're also looking at, you could have potential, floods in certain areas, like think in Florida, for instance, where there are natural disasters, and the hotel business needs to decide, where do they invest, right? Where are people going on vacation? Where does it make sense to maybe buy new properties? Where does it make sense to sell properties? Where should they allocate funds because of natural disasters? So think about the complexity of those decisions and how strategic they are for an organization. And, just on that example alone, it's the polar opposite from what most people think
Yep.
what treasurer does, right? And I think that's really the one of the biggest myths is the impression that treasury is an operational function, but in
Right.
reality, it's a very, very much
Right.
strategic function
Right.
in an organization.
Things are going through my mind. So you're a treasury professional and you're just glued on the weather forecast, the hurricane forecast, global warming. And when I used to work at a company where we made submersible motors that go underground, and we would always watch the drought. So we had to plan around the drought. Ooh, the drought forecast. And I didn't think I'd be going, learning about droughts and weather patterns and other things that impacted our demand. So I think that I would say treasury, like you said, treasury is, some people think it's boring, but it's actually quite fascinating.
Right.
If
Exactly.
if you really have the right
Yeah,
perspective.
capital allocation, intelligent capital allocation can be quite
Yeah.
complex, right?
Yeah.
A few basis points or, can make a huge difference on either, you took a loan that you shouldn't have, or
Yep.
borrow on a line of credit that you shouldn't have done it. Maybe you could have tried to, as we talk about payments, right? If, as a treasurer is closer to the payments workflows, maybe there are, instead of borrowing, maybe you could try to offer early pay discounts to a large client that then you get funds earlier, versus the date that you're expecting that, so there's all, they're borrowing that day. So all of these complex scenarios are quite
Yeah.
interesting, I think,
Yeah.
and quite
Yeah.
strategic.
Yeah, and you get to see how your decisions impact the bottom line. So I was just working on some survey results about the consequences of inaccurate or untimely cash forecasting, and a vast majority of companies obviously reported we entered into an FX transaction we didn't need to. Obviously, that's costly. Did all the accounting. This aligned our counterparty risk management. We did a short-term borrowing we didn't need to do. Oopsie, that can be really expensive. And then other things like, along those lines, they have money trapped in idle cash. They're non-interest bearing accounts. So you can, some of those things, when you fix them, it goes right to the bottom line.
Right.
And I bet the CFO loves to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and let's do one more round. And I am going to ask you one final question. I want to put it this way. So there are a lot of folks listening, treasury professionals, and in which areas of treasury do you feel need more attention?
A really big area that everyone still every year talks about, right? I know it's not going to be news what I'm going to say, but it's definitely around cash forecasting, as you mentioned as well, right? It's still forecasting, it's still quite complex in a lot of organizations because they all have different processes. I would say sometimes we do a little bit of a disservice when say cash forecasting, because it's not necessarily only cash, right? Organizations do have funds and, in financial instruments and other areas that they can, look at for liquidity. So, overall, I think forecasting is still quite difficult, quite complex. We've done lots of improvements on user interfaces, on
Mhm.
simplifying them, on be able to aggregate data easier from internal systems, from ERPs and so on, adding intelligence and AI for predictions and prediction modeling scenarios. We've done a lot, in the past few years. So we're definitely way ahead of where we were. but as an industry overall. But I think there's still a lot more to be done when it comes to forecasting. And you mentioned, there's still lots of organizations that don't feel comfortable with where they are today.
Well, Leo, thank you very much for spending some time with us and sharing your insights. I would also like to thank Bottom Line Technologies, as a lot of the things that Leo spoke about, you had the chance to experience Bottom Line's Cash Management Hub at my Cash Management Tech virtual forum in November. So hopefully you'll join us for that session. And I know Bottom Line will also have a big presence at the AFP conference in Boston. So if you're in Boston, please stop by the Bottom Line booth. And to all of my listeners, have the courage to live your treasury truths and dare to be great in everything that you do inside and outside of your professional lives. Until next time, everyone. Thanks for watching the show. I hope you guys liked it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned and hit the subscribe button for more.